Good evening and welcome to the Fredonia Central School District Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. We start every meeting with a pledge to the flag, and we have a student leader here tonight, Willa Ruckman, who we're asking to come forward and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Willa, come on forward. You'll do fine. It'll be worth it. Right on up here, Willa. Right up, Willa, right up here.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Our student leaders lead us in the pledge every meeting. Thank you, Willa. We're going to begin with a moment of silence for Mike Lawrence, a retired teacher, I believe in the elementary school. And I'm sure I remember him now. Yes. Anyway, who passed away recently. So if we could just have a moment of silence for Mr. Lawrence. Thank you. We have an approved agenda with a consent agenda. Upon a motion and a second, an affirmative vote by members present approves each and every item so designated. However, prior to the adoption of the consent agenda, any board member may remove any item from the consent agenda. This item will then come up for discussion as part of the regular agenda. If I could get a motion to bring that agenda to the floor, please.
So moved.
Ms. Gullo, and a second.
Second.
Ms. Powell-Fortman. Is there anything that anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda? I did fail to say that there is one correction, just a typo in item number 8H1. The girls and boys basketball camp will be from June 27th to July 14th, not from the 17th. And the backup that we received is correct, but it is just on the agenda. Okay? Anything else? Nothing to be pulled? Okay, with that. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda and the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Great. So the board has reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less per individual or group. Concerns and comments during this session should be directly related to items listed on the proposed agenda for the meeting. Is there anyone who would like to address the board here tonight? No? Okay. So with...
Is now the time or later? I have a question about the field conditions in the back. Would that be later or now?
I'll tell you what. If you would like to, you've got the mic.
Are you sure?
Go for it.
Okay.
I won't make you stay for the whole meeting. Even though the drones are going to be really cool.
Okay. I might watch that. That's a lot of pressure. If you want to just take one of these and pass it around. Yes. Okay, thank you. My name is Ed Schrantz. I'm at 205 Lambert Avenue in Fredonia. What I'm here speaking about right now is about possibly changing the configuration behind the school and hopefully in the future adding a turf complex to the campus here. All right, just a couple of things. If you plan on ever doing a capital improvement project in a northern latitude like we have, you really need to think about installing turf fields for the baseball, softball, football, and soccer teams. A couple of points here. First, there won't be any rainouts. You can practice outdoor more often. For example, on a day like today, I probably could have taken my team outside to practice, but because of the rain that we got, it's not possible. By doing that, we can save wear and tear on indoor facilities with softballs hitting off of bleachers and whatnot. The field conditions are safer if you're playing on turf as opposed to the uneven fields that we currently have back there. There's almost zero maintenance once the installation takes place. All of the lines are already embedded into the turf. There's no lining, there's no dragging, there's no mowing. You can save on costs for that. You can generate revenue by renting out the facilities for Section 6 sectional games and things of that nature. And then in the summertime, you can rent it out to local travel teams for any tournaments that they want to use it for and generate more income in that respect. We also have the room for it back there. Okay, we have a lot of acreage out there, so much so that you may be even able to install it and still have room to continue playing games on the grass fields while you can install the turf complex. What I handed out to you is what they installed in Grand Island just a few years ago. And when I also attached a newspaper article referring to that installation of the turf complex. And if you read it, not right now, but at your own leisure, a lot of the problems that they had, we have as well, in terms of they couldn't use their grass fields because the drainage was so poor. They had limited bathroom facilities, limited water to the fields, limited concession facilities. And if you go to a football game in the Orange Bowl right now, if you need to use the bathroom, you need to bring night vision because the porta potty is behind the visitors' bleachers and it's in a dark area. If you have to use the bathroom over here, I've used the field for travel games, and when the coaches tell me my girls have to use the bathroom in the summertime, everything's locked up, I tell them, well, there's a McDonald's over there, which is a little bit embarrassing if you ask me. As far as the diagram of the field, it has everything that they need, and if we were to install something like that, it has everything that we need. You have a football field, okay, a turf football field that can be used on game days for football games and soccer games. And if it's a game day and the soccer team's using that, if you look at the softball and baseball fields, there is another football field in there that they can use to practice on. And vice versa. If there's a football game and the soccer team wants to practice, they can move over to the softball, baseball area, and there is an imprint of a soccer field on there as well. So they can, on game days, they get the big field with the bleachers, and the other team can practice over on the practice field. Now, if you look at the outfield wall for the softball and baseball fields, those are temporary fences. And they're not the collapsible, real cheaply made ones. Those are ones that have a 10-foot wall, and then they go out in an L pattern so that they're very stable. And it's not like you have to take them up and put them down every game. You put them up in the spring before the season, and you leave them up for the whole season, leave them up for the summer. And then when August rolls around and the fall season, soccer and football begin, then you remove them then. So it's not that labor intensive. You just put them up, leave them up, take them down when you need to. I've been coaching a while for the district, and I love coaching it. And we have a lot of great athletes here. We have a lot of great teams here. Just look in the newspaper. We're always sending teams to sectional games and regional games and things like that. Just in the last calendar year, we have a Section 6 softball champion. We sent a team, a Section 6 basketball champion, Section 6 runner-up football. I mean, it's just, we have the athletes, we have the competitive desire, and I just hope that with any kind of, I'm not familiar with the budgeting process of this or when it can happen, but if it can, and if it's something that we can start working on today, then I really think we need to look forward on this. There's been a lot of talk about this over the years. And one more thing, every person I talk to in the community that has a child involved with the athletics program that uses the outdoor facilities here, every single one of them says this is something that we probably need to start looking into, especially in the latitude that we have where You don't get much time, especially in the springtime, to get outside and do what you need to do outside, game-wise, practice-wise, and so forth. So, I only have 3 minutes, so I appreciate if you would just please take a look at the diagram and the news article that went with it. And if we can get the ball rolling on this, I think it'd be great for the district, and it'd be great for something like you to do, really put your imprint on this community. You can be the board that did it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shrens. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Okay. Next, we have I'm getting ahead of myself. We've got a presentation on our high school drone program. Mr. Zoliak, would you like to introduce?
When do we need to do that? I think with Mr. Forbes here. Is that prior to the clerk? Pro tem?
I didn't do that.
I mean, I don't know if we can. Some point, I'd probably help.
Can we back up for a minute? Because Ms. Slagle is not available tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask for a motion to have Mr. Forbes as our clerk pro tem. Correct. If I could have a motion for that, please. Mr. Hawk, and a second.
Second.
Mr. Johnston. Anybody opposed to that? You don't get a vote, Mr. Forbes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Forbes.
I gotta pay attention to make sure everybody's.
We'll help you. Okay. Now, if we can have our drone program introduced.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Paschke momentarily, but again, these presentations are getting back to this idea of our district mission and vision of not only becoming our greatest selves, but also thinking about how we can be innovative, dynamic, and global in the learning opportunities we're providing for our students and adults. And tonight we have two great examples, one from the high school, one from the middle school. Mr. Paschke, you want to do a little intro for Mr. Haas?
Yeah, we're looking forward to having Mr. Haas present what he's doing in his new drone program. We've got 3 professional drone pilots, and Jackson, Andrew, and Lucas over here. They're going to be flying their drones. From what I understand, they've become adept at landing them on people's heads, so be ready for that. This is a really awesome example of innovation. We're really proud of Mr. Haas for bringing this forward and developing this, and I don't want to steal any of your thunder. Great program. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Haas.
What would you like us to present?
Right there's great, unless you'd like the mic.
Oh, no, I don't need
stand
mic.
there.
I don't need mic. So, as Mr. Paschke said, I'm Greg Haas, and I am the Technology and Information Engineering teacher here at Fredonia High School, and I'm here to talk to you about our Introduction to Drones Basic Quadcopter Skills course that we initiated this year. Don't make it one of those clickers. So I just introduced myself. Go ahead, Marge. Stay with me. And I brought along with me, as Mr. Paschke alluded to, 3 of my top students in my class, Andrew Dominski Hunt, little waving, Jackson Hickey, and Lucas Hoffman. And I want to thank them guys for taking time out of their evening to come and hang out with me some more today. So for this course, we have some objectives. And these objectives, you can just go right through them, and I'll just, because I was told I only have 10 minutes, so I want to make sure I don't overdo that. We're flying for recreational use, so learning how to fly drones, basically for a hobby, which most people are probably buying drones nowadays to do that. They're just hobbyists. There's probably not too many people right now getting into it for commercial reasons, but we're also flying, or learning to fly for commercial purposes, which means you're getting paid some way, shape, or form for using your drone. We're talking about the different types of drones. I brought along, this is one of mine and one of my favorites. Thanks to Mr. Drollinger for showing me one of these, because he's got one too. A little DJI Mavic Mini 2, which I love to fly. We don't fly these here. These guys, I want you guys to show us what we've got here, a couple of drones. You're going to see some pictures of these in a few minutes, but Jackson has what is called a Tello Rise. and it's just a little mini drone that we have. You don't have to fly them right now, turn them on, just kind of hold them up, guys. This is one that we're flying right now in class. It's very tiny, you can see that it's only about 4 by 4 square. Andrew's got the Sima that we use to fly. This is the kind of drone that you're probably going to go to a store and buy for about 50 bucks, and probably your first drone. And then you're going to be like me when I bought my first drone, which was very similar. I think it might have been the same thing. You put it up in the air, the wind takes it, and you never see it again. But these drones are made to fly indoors. This one I don't typically fly indoors, I fly it outdoors. And then Lucas has got his toy.
This is a 3D robotics solo. I've had it for 5 years now. It's good to just fly around. It's a lot bigger than some of the other stuff, a little more expensive, but I figured I'd go a little higher quality so it would last.
That's a nice drone. So going on with what we're learning here, the Federal Aviation Administration regulations, we're talking about those. There are a lot of rules out there for flying drones that I'm sure a lot of people don't even know about. The FAA Remote Pilot Knowledge Test Preparation. Really, when I started teaching this course, and maybe the first week I got into it, I realized this is basically driver ed for drones. Because when the students are all done, they will be able to take a test, the remote pilot test, and if they pass it, they can fly commercially. Right now, if they don't, they're flying recreational. We talk about airports and airspace, basically the same types of things that a pilot would need to know that's flying a manned aircraft. And we talk about basically and mostly how to fly the drones safely and responsibly, not on people's heads. We partnered with SkyUp out of Victor, New York, and they're the company. When I started talking about doing this course and then started doing some research, I looked at different places. I'm thinking, if I teach a drone course, what am I going to teach? And I had no idea, so I started doing some research and found out what other people were doing. And a lot of people were connected with SkyUp out of Victor. And so I got a hold of them and we talked to them and we agreed to terms with them. They give us what's called a learning management system. So basically the curriculum is from them, as well as they provide us with a flight simulator. So when the students aren't flying the real drones, they're flying drones on a simulator, which is very realistic, and I think they get a lot out of it. And BOCES is helping financially give us some of the stuff that we need. So with the drones that we have and some of the equipment. I went to training back, must have been the summer of 2021. And because it was that time, we couldn't teach that course right then. But anyhow, I went through 16 hours of basically classroom training, but of course at that point in time, we know everything was done remotely, so it was Zoom, and I wasn't, we were all on different computers. But there was, Mark is his first name, I don't remember, but he was from SkyUp, and he was talking about basically all the things that we need to know to teach the course to the students. I went to their facility, or one of their facilities up in the Victor area, and it's a big field house, and we flew drones for 8 hours. So the two drones that we're flying in class, the white one, the Sima, and the little black one, the Tello, we flew those basically for 8 hours. And that was really interesting for me because I didn't think I was the greatest pilot. I'm still not the greatest pilot, but learning how to fly those and maneuver them and control them. And so in those 8 hours of instruction, that helped out a lot. And then I came back and I did 8 more hours of training, learning how to use the management system and how to teach the course, basically, and then how to use the flight simulator and what I could do with students in teaching them. So that was a lot of training for the summer, but as I said, it was during the summer, so we couldn't start the course that very same year. So during the World of Technology course, I decided I'm going to throw a 5-week unit into that. So in the spring of 2022, we did a little preview of the drone course, and I had a few of the drones here. Actually, Lucas was in that class, right? So he had already gotten some experience with it. And we did it for about 5 weeks, and it was a very valuable experience for me, learning about some of the things that I'm going to find out when I teach the course as an actual course all by itself. So it was a good experience to do that and get it out. Our first flight, if you want to call it that, in the fall of this year, we got 16 students enrolled in the course, and then it's a semester course, So after the semester, well, at the beginning of the year, we found out we got a lot of interest in this course. We capped it off at 18, figuring that having that many drones flying in one space was going to be a lot, and it is. Even with 16 and having, we pair them up, so 8 drones flying at a time, and when we're in the gym flying them, it's not the biggest area that we could go to. I mean, we need more space for flying these drones, but again, they're designed to be flying indoors, so we're not going outside. But anyhow, this semester, I have 16 more students in the course, so the enrollment looks pretty good. And then, we're not going to fly it this Simon, this little white one, because I just want to talk about it real briefly, though. It's a very difficult drone to fly, and I said it's one that you might want to, maybe young people are buying as their first drone. You go to one of the department stores or wherever and get one for $50 or whatever, and you find out that they are really hard to control. They don't have any GPS. Basically, when you lift off, you have to keep moving the sticks on the controller to control that thing. There is no, it doesn't hover in place or anything like that, which we're going to demonstrate here with our little tello. Jackson, you ready for that? The tellos have DJI technology. DJI is a company, probably one of the leading manufacturers of drones around the world. And so the technology that's in one of these is also in these little Rise tellos. And so they hover pretty well, they fly very well, they're easier to control. They're very hard to see in the gym, we found out though. And this is an issue that we run into, is sometimes connecting them. It connects via Wi-Fi, so it's got a Wi-Fi signal, and it's going to the phone, and then getting it started sometimes isn't the easiest thing to do. But that's all programmed into the drone, so that's probably the first thing they find out. Like, whoa, I can do that. I'm going to be doing that all day. When we are flying these, we have some obstacles that were supplied with us, basically PVC pipe into the form of squares. And the students practice, because depth perception is really difficult when you're flying these things. So we have them fly out to the obstacle, fly through it, do a figure 8 through it, in a couple different directions, looking directly at it, turn it 90 degrees. Another one that's horizontal. Okay, we only got 10 minutes, guys. And then that was the Rise tello, and as you can see a picture of it on the screen. Those are about $150 with the kits that we have. They come with a controller, which you were using your phone, or who was flying it?
I was flying.
You were flying it? So you can fly with your phone, or you can fly it with a controller. It's really hard to fly with your phone because you're moving your thumbs around on the screen, and you don't have that tactability of where you're touching the sticks and knowing exactly where you're moving it. So those are the 2 drones that we have. And then I'm going to let these guys, if they want to say anything about the course.
I'll start. Like he said, I did the World of Technology class, and we started with these drones, and it went really well. I enjoyed it a lot. So I decided to enroll this year, and I've been enjoying it. I mean, I'm looking forward to using my experience I've learned in the future.
Yeah, I mean, like Dr. Zuliak said, I think it really supports the idea of the, innovative courses. For me, it's been really useful because I do a lot of work in media outside of school, and that's, what I'll be going into right after high school. So having this opportunity, it's almost like getting a certification from somewhere outside of high school. So it's, really valuable for sure.
I don't own a drone, and I'm not sure if I have a plan to, but
So I'd be a commercial, and not a commercial. I'd be for a fun pilot. But I think learning about drones is very beneficial as they keep evolving. They're going to be increasingly incorporated into different kind of jobs and other occupations. And learning about what they can do is really important.
Thanks, guys. I just want to mention briefly here about the remote pilot knowledge test. It's a national test. I can't give it here at school. It has to be given as a secure place. Closest place is here in Pennsylvania. It's a 60 question, multiple choice question test out of a bank of 400 different questions covering a variety of different topics. You have 2 hours to take it. You got to get a 70% to pass it, and then you get a certification to fly commercially. And for a mere $175, you can take the test. So right now, it's currently an option. I don't tell the students they have to go take that test because I don't expect them to shell out $175 for it. But I had a couple students from the first semester say they are interested in it, and when they're ready to get ready for the test, I'll sit down with them and work with them more on it. And I think Jackson wants to take it. I don't know about it either. Well, Andrew said he probably doesn't want to own a drone. I don't know what I did already, but...
No, I never said I don't want to own a drone,
Oh, okay.
but they're expensive, so
Yeah.
I'll wait till they go down a little.
But in any event, that's an option for our students, and like I said, I kind of feel like this is a driver ed for drones. And so just like if you're done with driver's ed, you can go take your road test, well, you can take this test and get a commercial license. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but it's really interesting and impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So some of the commercial uses for drones, do you get into that with them?
Oh, yes. That's one of the first things we start talking about. There's a list, and if you notice in the paper, just not that long ago, 3 or 4 days ago maybe, New York State Thruway Authority is starting to use drones. They're using them for inspecting bridges, they're using them for inspecting construction projects. Construction is a huge area where they're using drones, real estate, architecture, agriculture. The Sheriff's Office just started using drones. Was that a couple weeks ago, I think, we heard about that? Yeah. So they're going to be using them for search and rescue or for whatever else they might be doing. So and the thing is, you don't know. There could be a lot more opportunities out there for using drones, and people will be coming up with more opportunities, just like anything else. So it's there's a lot of places using it right now, and there's probably going to be a lot more.
Are there any prereqs for this course?
No.
What's the level? Can any grade level
I
can take it?
have every grade level in my class right now.
Okay. And what's the breakdown? Just curious on boys versus girls.
The first semester, I had 15 boys, 1 girl. This semester, it's 14 boys and 2 girls.
Okay. Maybe some work to do on that?
Yeah, I certainly, in the technology education area, we don't get enough women in there.
Yeah.
We need a lot more, because industry needs a lot more as well.
For sure.
So, well, thank you for your time, I appreciate it, and then thank you for endorsing this course, I appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys. Thank you, Mr. Haas. And students.
Yes.
Next on our list, we have a presentation on the Turning Points class. Mr. Ziliak.
Yeah, in a moment I'll turn it over to either Mrs. Troutman or Mrs. Paul-Hamus, but, I think the interesting and fun thing to see happen as we've sort of set this goal and set this vision is that it takes a lot of different forms. And as we talked about when we talked about our nutrition course at our last meeting, we talked about some of these are very overtly technology-based courses, like the drone course. Kind of what a lot of people might leap to in their mind when you think about innovation or being dynamic within the classroom. In other situations, we just have concepts that are innovative and are not as much based in technology itself, although Mr. Hitchcock is here to share some information Not that he's not utilizing technology within his course, but I would say in terms of the innovative part, it's more the concept and the ideas that are innovative. Ms. Troutman or Ms. Paul-Hamus, any
Yeah.
thoughts here? Yeah.
So this is our second year, right? Doing Turning Points. It's with our 8th graders. And we had some interest. Kids love hands-on. And so Dominic came up with this idea. It's some of the things that he did through his learning to become a teacher. And so we were excited when he wanted to do this, and the kids seem to really love it. So I'm going to let you take over.
And before you go down, board members, you have an updated presentation that's not as pretty without Ms. Slagle here. But I apologize for attaching the wrong one when I was giving you Ms. Slagle for the backup. So this is the updated presentation that Dom's going to share with us. Thank you, Dom.
I'm just back to my first year at Turning Point, second year at the district. Last year I taught 7th and 8th grade, but Turning Points is the first run through this. New course where I base it on my experience in high school and back in Upward Bound, but mainly based in high school where I had a teacher, Mr. Robertson, and we ran this project called National History Day. We spent almost a whole quarter where you could deep dive into a specific topic in history that fit the theme that year, and you could do a play, you could do a comedy, you could do a trifold, a presentation, a diorama, whatever you want to do if you fit that criteria and really make it look fantastic. I had time to deep dive, and throughout college and my professional career, I remember that project we made. I could draw back to it in other courses, and I used it previously with Miss Terrain and Upward Bound, and I was able to set up a project-based learning classroom where I had students, I could request materials, but they would build something, whether it be the Great Pyramids or Roman armor, helmets, shields, something where they could use this later on in high school to recall for background knowledge. And the whole goal of this course is, at least currently, is to have them be able to draw back to this course, because the next 2 years in 9th and 10th grade they're going to have global history, and they might forget some of the U.S. history learned in 7th and 8th grade. But when they get to 11th grade, they can think back to, I remember building the Alamo battle when we go to the Mexican American War. I remember doing the Jamestown colony and thinking back to the first, government system in the Americas. But this is also reinforced with EDUCON. Dr. Wright, Dr. Zillich, and Ms. Troutman for allowing me to go to this, but when we went to SLA Learning Academy, their entire facility was set up into a project-based learning situation where they give the students, hey, this is your topic, go and make something awesome. Where you see kids any level of the floors, and I tried to base my next, at least this quarter, on more freedom of choice. Where I could say, okay, the topic's going to be westward expansion, you have a 100-year bracket to choose from, pick a topic from at least these 5 or 6 or 7 choices and make something that you can show the class. It's an 8th grade course. It's per quarter, so every 10 weeks it changes, where the kids rotate. All students will take it throughout the year. It's not so much an elective, but they get it at different times. It expands on knowledge from 7th grade into 8th grade, whereas the first 2 courses, they should have background knowledge on from last year from Mr. Fabiano and Mr. Carell. They teach that. I taught it this year. But the next 2 projects we do, we have the first 2, Jamestown County, westward expansion. The final 2 should be new information that they can call up on in class. Where the goal was, I would collaborate with Mr. Fabiano, Mr. Carell, 8th grade teachers, and say, hey, what are you going to cover in the next quarter? I want to touch on that in my class, so when the kids get to your room, they'll be eager to share all what they learned. They'll feel more confident in class. The goal of the course is to engage all my students in project-based learning, which is more interactive. We haven't had a real note section of this. We haven't, okay, take your notes out, we're going to do notes today. We've had no days on that. It's been more of, this is the assignment, how can you tackle it? And I'm here to help you. We use a variety of learning styles and modes where any student who, whether it be they like to listen to the podcast of what's going on, or see a video, or hands-on build something, I try to address each mode in some way where each student's needs are being met. The goal of it is to analyze impactful events in history, specifically U.S. history, our 4 topics we've done this year at least, it's subject to change where, the students are interested in and however it works, but we cover the Jamestown County, Virginia, westward expansion, World War I, and the Red Scare of the 1900s. Each part, we have 2 divisions per project where part A is research, where it could be a PowerPoint presentation where they have to research and find and create 12 or 13 slides. It could be, I'm going to give them a couple of reading assignments from a novel or an expert or from their book, read, answer these questions, but they're going to work on their reading and writing skills. They're going to work on their presentation skills in class because all of them at some point will present their PowerPoint or trifold to the class. And they can choose which one to do if they feel more comfortable showing off, hey, I made this, this is why I made it, this is what it does, or this is my slideshow, let's go through this. But they all would work on their skills that way. The first topic is always going to be the Jamestown County, Virginia. The students enjoy it because we use a salt flour clay mixture where they get their hands dirty, but it reinforces that this time was the first time that in the colonies we had a representative-based government. So it's just a refresher course. It's usually a shorter project because they should have already learned that in 8th grade last year and this year again, but it's fun to get them interested in the subject in the class and toward our next project. On the screen I have just 2 examples of something I might give them for research. They'd read that, they'd pull out things, they'd quote something, they'd work on the DBQ skills, I could give them a document-based question, but they have at least per each topic a week or so of research and writing. In class we made projects where these are 2 examples of when they made the salt flour maps. They actually made the colony, they outlined the geography and why things were built and why it was built there. The next topic we would do is the westward expansion topic, where I would give them a 100-year bracket and say, okay, we're going to research this. I'm going to give you these 5 or 6 topics. Choose one with your partner, group up, find something you enjoy, deep dive into it. Some of them worried about the Oregon Trail, deep dove into that, could talk about the struggles they felt for the Battle of the Alamo and Mexican-American War. They got them building things and learning about what happened and why. One of our last 2 projects, as of right now, it'll probably be our last one of this quarter, but is the World War I trench warfare, where each of them, in my opinion, that World War I isn't covered enough in class. It's usually skipped over to get to Great Depression and World War II, so I wanted to take time on this and cover that, because I know in high school, a lot of the new Regents exams are more, not specifically, this event happened, tell me about it, it's this theme happening. And they can pull back themes such as World War I and the theme of the rise of Hitler, the rise of new technologies. I want to give them a variety of themes that they could pull on now and later when they get to high school. They made trifolds, the main causes of World War I. They convert them into trenches later on with the same materials and can show off the trench warfare styles and maybe a vehicle or an airplane, and really when they get to that point in high school, when they cover that again, oh, I remember going over this because I built this thing that I either have at home or it's still in this class, or I built this, I made that. They had ownership over that topic. And the last thing we do is the Cold War, the Red Scare. We briefly cover that as to Senator McCarthy and the scares of who's a communist, who's not, and it touches on current themes as to political discourse and who's on their side, who's not on their side, and just general themes that they can pull back later on. I want to thank you guys for having me present tonight. Are there any questions on my class?
Sounds great, thank you so much.
So, this is the first year you're offering?
First year offering this course, yeah.
Great. So it's in addition to the regular, I think it's great.
Yeah, last year, Ms. Powell taught technology, and now my class is an additional elective that they take.
I bet they love it.
It's been fun so far.
How many students do you have in the class at a time managing this type of activity?
About 20 to 22.
Okay.
They're the same section that would go to music or art.
Okay.
Come on down here for the next one. So it's about 20 to 22 kids per section. And I have 2 periods in a row, so I'll quickly at the end sweep their projects off to the side. Next one's all ready to go, and we do it all over again.
these sort of things are, as an adult, one of these things, you still can draw back to your science fair project back in fourth grade, so the projects are excellent.
That's the goal, is they can draw on that when they get to high school, when they get to college, when they're writing the Regents exam, and they have to pull on a certain theme for that topic, they have at least, hopefully, some to pull back from.
Yes, great project.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next on our agenda is our budget presentation. Mr. Ziliak and Mr. Forbes.
Yeah, again, just not to repeat everything that was kind of used as an intro at our last meeting, but again, this has been a joint effort, putting together a budget for the next school year. And again, it's interesting to think that we are planning for things that will happen starting at the end of this school year, so July 1 technically, into next school year, into this time next year, and more than a year from now. So that's quite a task to really think about what are other variables in play, what will that look like, what will cost be, and how will we use our budget not only to meet the needs of our students, but to maintain and potentially enhance our academic program and really focus on great opportunities for students across the board. So tonight is the second iteration of the budget, and Mr. Forbes is going to take us through it and then open it up to questions afterwards. So thanks, Mr. Forbes.
So this is, Dr. Ziliak said, the latest draft of the budget. There still are some unknowns in this process. We have obviously negotiations coming up for the Federal Administrative Association and CSEA, which is our teacher aid and cafeteria group. We don't have our final state aid figures because the state hasn't passed their budget yet, which hopefully will happen next week. I can tell you that from the information I've seen, the Senate and Assembly both have added additional educational funding. Not a great deal, but additional funding, which is good news because the governor's budget was such a big change that we were afraid that the Senate and Assembly would go to reduce that amount. So that's a good thing moving forward. And typically, the governor's proposal is the lowest of the aid packages, and the Senate Assembly is typically higher. We also don't have final equalization rates or final assessed values, which is normal. Those are things that occur at the time of the tax levy. Taking a look at salaries and benefits, you can see the distribution between instructional and non-instructional. The non-instructional is up because we have added several special class aids during the course of the year. We also have minimum wage adjustment occurring in 2 different contracts there, and also moving forward. And then we did have to build in an amount for the negotiation process with the CSEA. Benefits, you can see, are up 7%, and we'll get to that in the next slide. So employees' retirement system, that's a fixed rate. That did go up from $262 to $335. That's the payment. And I apologize, I'm not quite sure why the columns are out of line. So that's a set rate from the state. New York State teachers' retirement, we're also up. The rate there went from 9.8% to 10.29% on contributions for employees in that group. Social Security, of course, is tied to salaries, so that'll fluctuate depending on what happens to the salaries. Workers' comp, we had increased number of claims, which drove our premium from $128,000 to $155,000. Group life and unemployment, we've kept the same. Long-term disability, we bumped it slightly because we had to add a couple additional employees there. And then group health insurance, we're at a net of 4.8, which is a budget-to-budget comparison. The plan itself actually went up 7%, but between retirees and people making changes and what we had budgeted last year, we were able to keep that below the 7% increase from the trust. In this budget, we currently have no new positions. We do have the resignations of 4 teachers, and their replacements budgeted at step 630M. And we have 3 of those individuals are eligible for the FTA retirement incentive, so that's been budgeted for as well. Equipment, materials, and supplies, overall, we're up $210,000. About a little more than half of that is in the area of equipment, and there'll be a list in a couple slides of what that entails. And this is equipment district-wide, instructional, non-instructional, materials and supplies, instructional and non-instructional. Contractual expense in BOCES services, we're up $257,000 overall. Again, this is budget to budget. So there categorically, there'll be changes within contractual areas in some of the BOCES services. But we are being driven in BOCES. We had some things that were reduced, some of the technology pieces, but that's been offset by the high-cost special ed increases. Next slide is the equipment request. You can see the distribution across the board. Obviously, the big number there is the maintenance department. I have budgeted right now a trade-in of a zero-turn lawnmower, and then also we have in there a request for a 3/4 ton extended cab. Our vehicles don't end up getting a lot of mileage because we're not going far distances, but our oldest truck is now 2014, our newest truck is 2018. So at some point, we're going to need to take a look at least replacement of one of those. Curriculum replacement does include the $15,000 that we've allocated through previous years to the music department. Wheelock School Instructional, there's a need to get some new equipment to meet the UPK regulations, and then a variety of instructional requests across the elementary, middle, and high school. And then inter-school athletics, we're at $22,000 worth of requests. Our debt service, we're actually down $6,800. This is all like your mortgage would be. It's a set principal and interest situation, so these are fixed figures. No real big surprise there. Revenue sources, our state aid, we're up $1.9 million. That's being driven by full funding of the foundation aid for the most part, which is about $1.8 million, which will be on the next slide. Our local sources are up $44,000 for two reasons. One, I've budgeted a little bit higher interest income because the rates have been up this year. They are starting to slide already a little bit as of today. And then also we had an additional pilot agreement for a solar complex that's going out on Christie Road. Federal aid right now, which is our Medicare reimbursement, I just kept that at $100,000, so we're down $11,000 there. And then you can see the balance, we're applying the same amount, and the tax levy, of course, is the final revenue figure. Bottom of the page, I've got comparisons showing from 1920 to 2023-24 proposed comparison of the percentage of the budget of state aid and the tax levy, and you can see our state aid is running up until this year somewhere in that 42% range on average, and right now we're at 46%. As I mentioned, the big changes in the governor's proposal was the full funding, finally, of the foundation aid. So we saw a $1.8 million increase there. Typically, we're around $300 to $350. So this was a great year for that to happen because of all our increased costs. It's helping to offset that. Excess cost aid, which is driven by our high-cost special education students. We had more last year. Categorical aid, you spend it in one year, you get it back in the next year. So that's coming off of last year and likely will be the same way next year. Minor adjustment to computer hardware, $20,000 of BOCES aid, $96,000 for transportation aid. Again, categorical. We had a high-cost situation transporting a student to Buffalo. That's driving the increased aid there. Building aid, we're down $204,000. That is because in the last school year, you got your building aid on the chimney at Wheelock, and of course, that was a one-time emergency aid. So that's out, and that is the reduction there. Taking a look then at the proposed budget in summary, top half is expenditures, bottom half is revenue. It balances out. So you're looking at a proposal right now of $34,475,442. Next slide shows comparative data going back to 2014-15 in terms of what our budget was, what any change might be in. And obviously the proposal as it stands today is our highest in that time period. You've got the inflation factor and contracts and so forth that need to be taken care of with minimum wage and so on. Each district needs to comply with the tax levy limit. It's not a 2% cap, although that's the general perception. Each district has a formula that is used to calculate it. For us this year, based on how everything landed, we're at 3.51%, or an increase, allowable increase without a supermajority vote of $575,000. This particular budget draft is at the cap of 3.51. And then the next slide, which we had seen last time, just shows comparison of the tax levy limit and what our actual tax levy has been going back to the implementation of the levy limit. Budget also includes a capital outlay project. It's again going to focus on Wheelock. We're going to do some more blacktop replacement on the football field side of the building. In order to do that, we need to spend at least $10,000 inside, so we're going to do some flooring replacement there, and we've learned recently that flooring has gone up as well. So the number of rooms that I was hoping to get, I don't think we're going to be able to get them all, but at least we'll have some of those done, and then there's a required New York State architect's fee as part of this project. Big ticket items that are remaining here, I mentioned this a moment ago, we've got $71,000 for maintenance equipment, $16,000 for custodial. We've got placeholders for the Fredonia Administrators contract, the CSEA contract. Our occupational education is up 2 students, which is 3 students actually, which is $41,000, which is good because more students are interested in going to the program, but there is a cost to that. High-cost special ed placements, as I mentioned earlier, are up about $328,000. In that number, I'm carrying an extra slot and an extra aid in one of the high-cost areas, which is where I typically do that. Medical prescription drug premiums as a whole, we were up 7%, but as I mentioned, we were able to budget be at 4.8%. BOCES alternative education, including the WAVE program, we're up 61,000. We've seen increases in fuel prices and for transportation and utilities. As I mentioned, the retirement rates for the teachers' retirement and the employees' retirement are up. Our transportation expenses are up. They're allowed to increase our contracts when we extend them by the CPI, so obviously CPI was high this year, and that's driving that. We've had to increase the line item for multiple out-of-district special education placements. We have a student at Baker, student at Summit, and also an increased number at Randolph Academy, so that's reflected in here as well. And our workers' comp premiums, as I had mentioned, discussing the benefits, were up $27,000 in that category. So moving forward, you don't have a board meeting now until after Easter break, which would be the point in time that the board's going to have to make a decision on the budget. So in between, if there's changes that the board wants us to do, what we'll do is put that together, give a new packet of information so that you have a chance to digest it and not get it that night, and have a chance to ask questions and so forth.
So the next presentation will be the Tuesday after, right after Easter break, right?
Correct. And as we've done in the past, on those nights, if there's a change that occurs off that presentation, then we're going to have time to adjourn or take a break or whatever to make those adjustments.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Mr. Forbes, on the big ticket items for transportation expense and the out-of-district special ed, are those numbers after we get aid back to reimburse us?
No, that's the increased cost, and then the aid comes back in the subsequent year because of categorical.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Ford, what's the difference between the occupational education and then the alternative education and WAVE? So,
Well,
I don't know if that-
occupational education would be your career
Right,
path.
yep.
Alt-Ed is a physical school located in Casadega at Maple Avenue, where students attend in person. The WAVE program, the increase in the WAVE program has been due to students that after COVID have had more anxiety returning to school and being around other people. And so that is an online program provided through BOCES. It is housed also at the same location. The teachers that interact with our students are there, but they do an online program. It's not taught by live teachers, it's all video and reading, and then they can get their regular classes that way.
Thank you.
Yep.
What's the state aid change percentage? So foundation aid in and of itself was 18.3%. Say 18.3 increase. Okay.
On the equipment requests, are those the requests as they have come in, or these are reduced to what they need to be, or these are the amounts that have been requested by each?
A little of both. Some were requested, some were reduced. In the original draft that you saw last week, I had just a placeholder for maintenance and custodial, so those have been adjusted, so they're down a little bit from what they were. And I know there's been a couple other adjustments, just things that are coded as equipment when the packets come in from the buildings that aren't, or vice versa, so there's been some movement there.
And then what was the curriculum replacement?
Curriculum replacement, we've been budgeting for a number of years now, 15,000 for musical instruments. And so we're continuing that, and then I usually carry an additional 2,500 in there in case there's other curricular things that come up, or if when they do the bid, the music bid is over 15,000. So,
So a question I haven't prepared you for. Nothing new, right? So you take a $34 million budget. You've got 17 million of salary. Is it 17?
roughly.
And boy, I've got to go back. Is that just instructional?
No, that would be combined.
That's combined. But you've got 17 in salaries, you've got debt service, you've got contractual expenses. Out of that 34 million, how much can you really work with here? Less, 10%?
Probably a little bit more than that, depending. But salaries, benefits, you're essentially locked in. That typically is somewhere in the 65 to 70% of your budget, total budget.
And then debt service and contractual.
And debt service is actually down, so there's no impact there.
But still, it's part of the 34 million.
Correct.
So I'm just talking about what's left over that we can really negotiate here on and whittle down. And it's really not a lot. It's not like we can reduce a $34 million budget by 5%, because more than that is locked in. So.
Yeah, and as I think I mentioned last time, and obviously everybody's costs have gone up, and ours has too, but it seems like literally every way you turn, you think, okay, that's good, I can do that, then something else comes in that's up. And even as late as today, talking to Kristen Farrell, there's the potential for more BOCES placements, and that's not being carried right now, so.
Yeah, and we can't, that's not discretionary, it's fixed, we have to do it.
Yeah.
But so I guess what I'm thinking here is of that, I'm going to call it 10%. You might think it's a little bit more than that. You know, we really have to prioritize some of that, but we can't really drop it. But we've got to prioritize our new requests. And I think that if we look at our tax levy limit over the past, this is 13 years now, 14 years, there's kind of a break here. In 2014-15, we went below 1%, and it's 0.87, 1.73, 0.89. And then the last 4 years were 0.1, 0.1. You know, I know that 3.5% is a pretty big increase in our tax levy, but I'll tell you, I think you've done a good job of tightening your belt as far as getting rid of any excess here. So,
Yeah, and the great concern is, for me, is that we're coming off a year in which we were pretty much maxed out, and as we'll discuss in a few minutes with the financial reports, we're running that way again this year. So that becomes a concerning pattern.
yeah. So, you know, I know 3.5 is a big number, but when we look at the past 4 years of 0.1, 0.1, and we really weren't that high in the years before that. It's not something that our taxpayers can really complain too much about, especially with inflation the way it's been recently. Any other questions, comments?
I do have a question for you, John. If we're at the 3.51, that requires the supermajority vote?
No. We're actually $2,000 below, right now below the tax cap, so it would just be a standard vote. If you go over whatever your tax cap calculation is, it requires a 60% or greater yes vote.
So over that would be.
And the issue there becomes, when you take a look at voting history, through the implementation of the tax cap, there's been a marked decline in the number of voters that come in, so that makes it harder to get to a 60%.
And just to confirm, I mean, and I think we talked at the last meeting, we had requests for additional staffing in different places, and based on where we are, I mean, that's just something that we're not gonna be able to move forward with based on these other external factors with inflation and increased costs. So we are foregoing things that we're looking at the district and saying we would like to have.
Yeah, as John mentioned, in working with Mrs. Farrow, the one area that we're continuing to explore is special education with the increased needs across the district. We are also within that request is counseling or behavior specialist support. And right now, we're just kind of monitoring, sort of on hold in that area. There is a chance, as John was alluding to, that when the final numbers come in, maybe there'll be probably a fairly slight increase, but it might be helpful in that area. And also weighing that out against, like, if we weren't able to develop a class here internally, what would it then cost for those students to be in another placement? So some give and take in those conversations too. So there's some other smaller pieces that we may be able to put in place, but for right now, we were really just trying to be at or under the tax cap to avoid a supermajority situation. And then see how things really shake out in reality. The things that sometimes we forget, we're still dealing with those unknowns of what those amounts will actually be.
Right. In my mind, this isn't, from my perspective, it's not a final situation, because we've got things like the staffing that we have yet to see, the final input into that, and then we also have the state aid situation. So there's going to be some movement still. One of the things I was going to try to do, we talked about the other day, was to see if we can get off that million and maybe get down to 950, and I'm not sure exactly in my mind yet, but basically if you're carrying $1 million, you want to replace $1 million. So if you carry 500, you replace 500, so it just becomes like this, and we have to decide if you move it down, what do we need to have for all the things that happened this year that we didn't expect, if they all happen again next year and we don't expect them. So I'm still in my mind trying to decide where I'm going to land with that. We've had ongoing discussions about that, so.
Yeah, and if you take $1 million, replace $1 million, but what that does is that, we had a 12% reserve a couple of years ago, and we dropped that down very quickly. The board, at that time, we had tried to have a goal of a target of 8%, and we thought we could drop it slowly.
That was the 3-year plan that became a 1-year plan.
Yeah, and so now, we've got to be very cautious because we're at that target, and we don't want to drop it down. I can see dropping it down 0.1%, but this isn't the time to be in the same mode that we were a few years ago. We said we're way above the target. We can be kind of conservative on the budget.
We're hopeful there's a few revenue things. Like I mentioned, the T-bill rates were good. They were running in the 4.5 range. Today they were down around 4. I think they're going to slide some more because of all that banking stuff. But that's going to be a positive on the revenue side, which will help to a small degree to offset maxing out the expenses. So we're hopeful a couple of those things happen.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Forbes. So next we have the approval of minutes from our last meeting. If I can get a motion, bring that to the floor, please. Ms. Gallo, and a second. Mr. Marshall. Any questions, comments, corrections, concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the financial treasurer's report and the budget status report. Mr. Ziliak.
Yeah, John, again, has prepared the dashboard, which was included as part of your information. John, if you want to.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're tracking tight right now. If everything fell, what we're thinking is going to fall, we'd be about 94,000 underspent. So again, we're running tight there. Still tracking that. Hopefully, things will be a little bit better there. On the revenue side, we're actually up 192,000 on this draft of the dashboard, so that kind of helps a little bit there.
Any questions from the board of where we're at as far as our budget status, budget and revenue, really? Okay, no further comments on the revenue status?
If we do that, just a couple quick things. In February, we got a supplemental lottery aid payment of $79,000, and we received our first scheduled BOCES aid payment of $195,000. Other than that, it was pretty much business as normal.
Okay. So if I look at your estimated expenditures and our estimated revenue, we're a little over $700,000 that we'll be taking off of the assigned fund balance.
Yep.
If I gave you a dozen donuts right now, what would you put your money on to be within $50,000? How much are we going to use out of fund balance? You get a dozen donuts if you're within 50,000. How much?
Chocolate?
Your choice.
I'm hoping 500.
500. Okay. 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 It's all on record. John says 500.
Well, I was hoping.
That wasn't the deal. Okay. No questions on budget or revenue status? All right. And then the investment report, that's at the end of that.
Yeah, we're 96,000 from the T-bills. Rates began to climb in the fall, and we had some paperwork that had to be taken care of, so once we got that going, we started investing in the T-bills. As you guys mentioned along the way, we hit January, February, you begin to see a dip in the amount of money available for us to do that with. We did get our scheduled spring sustaining state aid payments today, which was about $2.5 million, so that went back out in T-bills, and we are expecting within the next week about 800,000 of our unpaid taxes from the county, so hopefully we'll be able to move that out a little bit. And I'm shooting to try to get to 200. I don't know if I'm going to make it by the end of the year, but that would be very helpful.
Of 200 of
200,000
of investment. Okay, so a question here for you on that. You've got 96,000 to date, and that's the end of February, but in your revenue status, you're looking at almost double that. It was use of money, it's 171.
Use of money includes other categories. It's got rent, income from our BOCES, or
Okay,
school rental.
okay.
So there's other things in
Okay.
that category.
Okay,
And also, the 96,000 is purely the T-bill, so we have had increased interest on our bank accounts as well.
Okay.
Certainly not to that degree, but
definitely not.
it helps, so.
Yeah, okay. So use of money to me is interest, not rent, but,
Yeah, it's, the use of money is the 2000 series of codes, so it's rent and interest and a couple other things.
okay, thank you. Any questions from the board on that? No? Okay. Okay, so then we've got the review and approve the treasurer's report for February 23. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Ms. Hahn, and a second.
Second.
Ms. Powell-Ford now. Mr. Ford,
No issues there, no problems, all good.
everything's all balanced. Any questions from the board? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ford. So we have the approval of a resolution for participation in our BOCES cooperative bidding. If I could have a motion to bring that to the floor. Mr. Johnston, and a second. Second. Mr. Marshall. Mr. Ziliak.
Yeah, no changes. This is a yearly resolution. And nothing represents a great change here. This does allow us to tap into large quantity purchases at lower costs for all the component districts. John, I don't know if there's anything else that would be.
Yeah, primarily for us, it's culinary, so cafeteria, and then paper products for the print shop. Two main areas.
Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the approval of probationary appointment of Becky Marlis Figueroa to a 10-month position as teacher's aide. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please? Ms. Gullo, and a second. Ms. Powell-Fortner. Mr. Ziliak, any comment?
I don't have the bio information. I usually do. And I'll make sure I have that next time, so I apologize.
Okay. Any questions outside of that? Good to have teachers' aides. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Thank you. So then we have the appointment of Margaret Brisky to a 10-month-a-year position as a temporary school secretary. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please? Ms. Powell-Fortner. Mr. Marshall? Mr. Ziliak, we're doing a little swap here on this.
Yeah. Many of you would know is Peg Brisky, who has been a long-time person in our elementary building looking for a change. So she currently occupies a clerk 2 position there, and she will be moving to the Wheelock office as a replacement for retirement, and will then be in the position of a school secretary. So obviously we're sad to see Peg leave the elementary building. I believe there's a little celebration planned, which maybe you can touch on in the round table.
Okay.
At the same time, we're happy to see people moving into a position that they're excited about, a little, re-energy and all of that. And we're happy to have her staying with the district and being supportive at Wheelock moving forward in the next few days here. So,
Long time employee of the district.
Congrats to her.
Yeah. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the approval of items pertaining to the 23-24 budget vote. And just kind of to recap here on this, the legal notice, it's quite a bit of verbiage, but we have the annual budget hearing on May 2nd, 2023, right here in the high school library at 6 o'clock before our regularly scheduled meeting. Vote will be held on Tuesday, May 16th, between 2 p.m. and 9 p.m. Absentee ballots must be received by the district clerk prior to 5 o'clock on May 9th, 2023. And those completed ballots must be received no later than 5 p.m. on May 16th. Applications for military ballots must be received by the district clerk no later than 5 p.m. on April 21st. The resolutions are, shall the following resolution be adopted, which will be the budget amount, but we also have a resolution for a student attending, who is a high school student within the district, to serve as an ex officio student member of the Board of Education, so they will be a non-voting member participating in the board. So those are the two resolutions. If I could get a motion to bring that to the floor, please.
So moved.
Ms. Hahn, and a second.
Second.
Ms. Powell-Fortner. Any comments, Mr. Ziliak?
No, we started talking about the non-voting student member a while back, and we kind of missed a window of opportunity last year, this time of year, so we do have it as part of the notice this year. Again, as Mr. Aldridge had alluded to, we work very closely with our legal counsel on all the wording here to make sure it's accurate and reflects all those things that need to happen. Thanks to Ms. Slagle for her hard work and meticulous focus on detail to make sure that everything is accurate and the way it needs to read. And she also spent a lot of time on the phone back and forth with our legal counsel, so I'd just like to recognize her. And we're excited about this idea of including a student or students in the process. And we'll have some decisions to make once this is established. Probably the two things that most other districts have wrestled with: how do we select that student? And we have a few options that seem to make sense to me. And also, would it be a student and an alternate, or a couple alternates? Some districts actually appoint several students, knowing that, typically you tend to get a student who might be involved in a lot of activities, maybe athletics, other things. And we can hash all that out once this becomes official and the community supports it. So, more to follow.
Any questions? No? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the Chautauqua County School Board Association Executive Committee member vote. And the Chautauqua County School Board Association is made up of many different members in the executive committee, but they're looking for 4 new members, and we are given 5 individuals to run for those 4 spaces. So I think that we'll probably have to do how do we want to do this, a roll call vote? Did we really think this through?
Mr. Aldrich,
Yes.
do we get one vote as a district, or are we each individually voting?
It is 1 vote for the district.
Okay. Okay.
Which could be determined by the sum of individual members.
Right, I see.
Because different school boards will have different number of members. Some school boards have 9, some have 5.
Makes sense.
So
Yes.
it would be 1 per
Yes.
district.
1 per district.
So I think that what we're going to do, can we do this by hand vote?
I think so.
Would probably make the greatest sense. So
Could it be a recommendation or write in? Or does it have to be?
we'd have to have some transparency to it. So let me just do this. And all board members have received a bio on all 5 members. So if I could just ask for a raise of hands for those individuals who would vote for Larry Ledestro from Frewsburg. That's 6, including myself. Now, you only get to vote 4 times here, okay? And again, a hand vote for Dr. Margaret Spence from Beavis Point. And a hand vote for Teresa Gutzman from Sherman. 7. And a hand vote for Tracy Schrader from Faulkner. And a hand vote for Jeff Chase from Pine Valley. Okay, so the way that works out is, as a board, let me let me put the motion together that our board is casting a vote for Larry Lodestra from Frewsburg, Teresa Gutzman from Sherman, Tracy Schrader from Faulkner, and Jeff Chase from Pine Valley. If I could have a motion to make, a motion for those 4 members. Mr. Hawk and Mr. Johnston. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. And with that, we get to our superintendent's report. Mr. Ziliak.
Yeah, a couple quick updates, then we'll talk a little bit about the first read of the instructional calendar for next year. So, first off, we continue to pursue the idea of long-term planning for the district as a goal, which looks like at this point it would start at the beginning of next school year. We continue to reach out to vendors for information about their process and their timeline. Many of those vendors right now are finishing up work from this school year. Some have responded and some have said, hey, I really need to focus on the jobs that I have out there, but I will get you that information. And once we have that again compiled, we will be sharing information and thinking through who would best meet our needs in this area. We had a meeting today for further planning for our building condition survey with our architect, Young and Wright. Again, this will be occurring over the next several months. We have a site visit planned over our upcoming spring break with the reps from the firm. And that's just mainly to get the lay of the land and prepare them for the full visits that will happen later in the spring. This definitely connects with Mr. Schrantz's comments tonight regarding the athletic field and potential work that could be done. I did try to, as he was speaking, Google the Grand Island website just to see what kind of number might be on a facility like this. I couldn't get a number beyond that. They did a $24 million building project that this was part of, but it did not break it down specifically into what that would cost. But again, one of the things that we're asking Young and Wright to do is to highlight the athletic fields, the athletic facilities in their assessment, and then in their recommendations for how we can best meet the needs of our students and put our student athletes in the best position to be successful. So we look forward to more information about that. We also continue to think about this idea of what are the skills and the attributes that we're looking to build in our students beyond the curricular learning that takes place at each academic grade or in each academic course. One question that has come forward in this conversation is about what leadership skills are we building in our students and how this is or could be done systematically across the district as part of the learning for all students and adults for that matter within our district. Our admin team continues to grapple with this question and gather additional information. This is also something that at some point we see bringing a recommendation forward for work around that initiative. We also continue to review both our academic and athletic programs, the areas in terms of strength and weakness, and also looking at next step. This is a work in progress as we look to implement both short-term and long-term actions to strengthen and improve experiences for our students and student athletes. This also connects with Mr. Schrantz's comments as well. Last meeting, we talked about some BOE committee meeting dates, which were then shared through the weekly update email. The committee dates at this point are as follows: a facilities meeting on 4/20, an audit committee meeting on 4/25, and a policy meeting on 5/4, all within the next month or so. Please let me know if for some reason those dates are problematic for any of those members who are part of those committees. At the last meeting, we also talked about Board of Education members participating in both the negotiations for the FAA and the CSEA. In terms of the FAA, we do have a meeting tomorrow night at 4 p.m., which we'll chat about a little bit later. And still looking for any board member who would be interested in attending that meeting. And also, we have a couple dates for CSEA, or at least one date for CSEA on 4/17/23, which is tentative at this point, but we're hoping that that date will work. So if you're interested in participating in that as well, feel free to let me know additionally. In terms of our draft of the calendar for next school year, again, this is a first read. We are still looking at a couple small tweaks to this, but I think primarily what we have here looks pretty good. Again, by contract, this is a joint collaboration between the district and the FTA. I've had a couple different occasions to chat with Michelle Greenow, the FTA president, about the calendar, and we've incorporated some of their feedback into what you see here tonight. Again, by contract, we have 5 conference days each year, or in-service days. Next year, we plan to begin with 3 of those days right out of the gate in August, and then begin school on December 5th, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day. Other things that we typically have in play that continue in this calendar. On October 6th, we usually have go home early drill, which isn't really a whole lot early, maybe 10-15 minutes, but that is something BOCES has asked us to do in all component districts on the same day. The teacher-parent conferences remain in October on the 2 half-days, the 20th and 27th. November, everything pretty typical there, with a few holidays in the mix. In terms of December, again, a lot of the days off, like on the 22nd, and then leading into the new year of the 2nd are contractual days that our employees are entitled to. And again, right now, as we did this year, we have a other in-service day at the end of January, which would mark the end of the first semester, beginning of the second semester. February, pretty much as it stands this year, with in session every day except President's Day. Again, we have the 2-week break in March and April, as we've had in the past. One interesting thing about the April conference day is that this is the same day that there will be an eclipse. And there is a lot of conversation about the crowd that might draw. Fredonia and really right along Route 90 is right over the path that the eclipse will travel. So there are some who anticipate a lot of activity, a lot of visitors. We'll see how that actually plays out. But there was concern that with increased traffic, it might be difficult to get buses mainly out of the district on that day. So having a conference day or an in-service day there alleviates that concern. May, kind of your typical month there, with again just a holiday around Memorial Day. And you'll see that Regents Week next year goes a little later than usual into the last week of June. Our last day of school, at least as of right now, would be Wednesday, the 26th. A couple things in play.
Have you provided that draft to the board? I believe Steve and I saw that
I'm looking
draft.
for it in the packet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, is it not in the back?
It was online, but not in our packet.
Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't
Okay.
as a part of
Okay.
our packet.
I apologize.
I know
for
I've
that.
seen it, but okay.
I can get that to you by
Thanks.
scan tonight. The other thing that's in the mix, and especially in thinking about, this idea of professional learning that we've been trying to engage in, and we recognize that we do have 5 days built into the calendar for this. By contract, 2 of them, we collaborate more with the FTA, and there's really just 3 district days that are solely ours to arrange and schedule. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about tonight, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Wright in a minute, is this idea, especially if we're looking at an initiative where we might consider what I was talking about earlier, those skills and attributes we want to build in students. What are they? How can that be done? Would it be possible to incorporate a few other professional learning days into the calendar? The way that that's typically done is through half-days. That would be half-day for students. They would leave at the midday, and our staff would remain for professional learning in that spirit. So what we're asking about tonight, proposing tonight, is that we would add 4 half-days in addition to what's here right now, probably spread out throughout the year, and we've been still kind of debating that and didn't want to go too far down the road if that's something that the board was not interested in, or maybe some variation on that. But Dr. Wright, as somebody who is leading our curriculum efforts and also has a group this year that's meeting around professional learning, professional development, I was hoping you could share a couple thoughts.
Absolutely. So with our curriculum council, which is made up of our instructional leaders, that's from UPK 12, one of our subcommittees this year is the Professional Development Committee. And part of that task is to submit our 3-year plan to the state. That's a requirement. And informally in that plan, we've had a lot of discussions about PE days, about the use of them, and there are just so many competing factors in school. And with the curriculum initiative, particularly with the math initiative, we want to dedicate days to training. Well, when you dedicate any day, that means that by virtue of that, you aren't able to get to other things. Whether that is the work with your teams in the horizontal alignment of the curriculum, whether it's the work across grade levels with the vertical alignment of the curriculum. It also means then that if you want to do something else such as iReady, or look at data, have data meetings, or even look and explore some other new type of training, whether that's SEL, helping our staff to have the skills, working with, we're hearing about some of the increased needs, the post-COVID needs, and really it's helping us to kind of catch up with, now that it's hard to train for needs that you don't know what they are, and now that we have them, now we know what we need to be doing. So the idea behind this also is that when you have a conference day that is part of the school year, that is a work day versus outside of the general budget, as we're seeing today, to increase days over the summer. So those are voluntary days. You can't mandate staff to come outside of that 10-month window, outside of your approved school calendar. And even if, let's say, every teacher wanted to take us up on it. So in looking at the cost of having every teacher, grades 1 through 8, who teaches the Envision Math program, 1 day of that training is $7,000. So now you multiply that, trying to get initiatives done, and again, it's inequitable in the sense that not everybody's going to be able to make it because it's summer, and not everybody might want to come. And now your training is not even. And that's the opposite of what we want to try and do. And so in order to further the professional discussions, what we're hoping the board will consider is to take the idea of staff development, embedding some more days as we're lifting off some of these initiatives, as we're lifting off taking the data and the work that we're doing this year and seeing really what our needs are. And that also includes being able to secure the trainers to come in to train. So there's really a lot of moving parts to this, and to try, time is such a valuable commodity. So when you think of 5 days, and again, as Dr. Ziliak explained, 2 of those are in conjunction with the FTA. That back to school conference day are all the mandated things we have to do. So that gets eaten up right away with that. So, you start reducing it to realize, like, oh my goodness, you really don't have as much time as you think you do to get everything done in schools that we want to get done. So this is one, proposal or idea, something, concept to consider, of being able to truly go deeper in the work we're trying to do with dedicated time for staff to say, okay, let's come together, we'll know what they are, we have a specific purpose for it, to be able to further what really we're talking about today with our mission and vision, some of our STEM initiatives, having those cross-curricular conversations with the art department, with the math department, with the science department. We have the new science tests, which are requiring a huge deep dive into these investigations, into the increased Lexile level of reading, which is requiring us to really all become teachers of literacy, much more so than we thought before. And, as we know, the great state of New York likes to give us these things without any chance to know what it's going to be ahead of time, to then prepare people to say, okay, what do we need to do for professional learning in these areas? So this really helps us to take that breath and look at the days, look at the dedication of them, talk to our instructional leaders, work as a collaborative team, work with the building principals to be able to say, what is it we're trying to accomplish? And how can we do this in a thoughtful, specific, methodic way to touch on all of our curricular areas that we're trying to really focus on. So that's what it comes down to on our team.
Yeah, just please know that we don't suggest that lightly. We recognize there's a trade-off in all this, and there would be some time where our students would not be in school, and certainly we want our students in school, and we don't, throw that out there as a casual recommendation or thought. This is something that we really try to look at. It's like Dr. Wright was saying, we tried to look at, what if we did it in the summer? What would that mean? What would that cost? What would that look like if you string together 2, 3, 4 days? And we just feel like right in this moment, given where we are, given what we're trying to do, and where we're trying to go as a district, this would be an option. Questions? Comments?
Outside of this curriculum committee that's been talking about this, has this been kind of out to the broader faculty in terms of their interest and kind of their idea of the trade-off, right? Because anytime we have learners, right, the learners have to meet us halfway and also be engaged and wanting that experience. So is that something that we will poll more broadly to see if this aligns?
We haven't pulled the idea of the half days. What we did was ask, what are some of the learnings? What are the important initiatives? What are the things people want to dedicate time to? And they run the gamut of the literacy, science, the STEM, the math and vision, especially next year in the fall will really be, everybody in those grades will be focusing on it fully, the full compliance with it. And we've done a lot of dedicated time this year to the Envision, to be prepared for that. So there's a lot of concern over that. And there's a lot of concern over training with the social emotional, the regulation, safety care, being able to work and to upgrade our own knowledge and skills on the latest in research, with just how best to work with students who are dysregulated. And to do that requires, the training to have, but we're very, very fortunate, and I certainly would let Mrs. Farrow talk more too about, we have 2 people in our district trained to be trainers. So that's wonderful. But to have them do that, and you're talking about, all across the district, to pull all those people for a training, is very difficult just to coordinate on a general, day, particularly, off of school calendar days.
I guess piggybacking on that, I would be curious what the teachers thought about the loss of instructional time. And I'm also a little curious, when there's a half day, what is the consensus among the teachers and administrators about whether that's really kind of like a loss of a full day, or whether there really is instruction that goes on during the shorter class periods?
And I guess, that's my concern, and, especially maybe for AP classes, which we're offering more now in the high school, which already New York State were short on AP time before AP exams, and I always hear, right, there's such a crunch to try to get all of that content in, so.
There's trade-offs.
Yeah.
There's trade-offs, I understand, they're all trade-offs, for sure, but I guess that's the question.
Yeah, so half days count full days towards your 180, and that's not a concern, but we can certainly get that feedback.
Disturbance to the students too. Because what gets done in half a day?
Well, that was my question, I know as a parent what our experience is with the half day, but I'd be interested to know what, your experience is and teachers' experience with those 20-minute, is it ever discussed to change that? I think there was a time when the first one was an A day and the second one was a B day maybe.
Or morning versus afternoon, because again, I agree that approach of the.
I'm curious about that, and then I just wonder who's involved, and is this all 3 buildings?
It would be the district.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be everybody, and and that's why the conversation's happening now, so that it can be thoughtfully considered, thoughtfully planned, have the input to talk about it. The desire is more professional learning. The hard part is how, when, where.
the disturbance to our kids is more concerning to me than the actual how, when, and where. You know, as far as 4 days, I mean, we've heard reports from our administrators that speak of missed time in the seat is very crucial to, you know, lost learning. And so we're talking about, you know, 4 days.
4 half days. So
Like 4 days of disruption.
Is it an impossibility to have a morning classes on one half day, afternoon classes another day, then morning B, afternoon B? Is that out the window, or as opposed to shortening the days completely?
Why it's an idea generating time. It's the idea to say, how do we do this in the best, most thoughtful way if we choose to do this?
Because short periods, it is, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. And of course, you have the AB inequity, so you have to, if you have 4 days, I don't know.
Yeah, and one of my conversations, you know, and before even bringing this to this level was with, you know, Mr. Lauer in athletics. What is the best time of year to not impact the athletic schedule? You know, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. So this, like, you know, Dr. Ziliak said, this recommendation, you know, did not come lightly. It was looking at all of the different things. What are our typical concert schedules? Where's end of the semester? When do the exams happen? What are the sports seasons? You know, the window to shoot the gap is very, you know, very, very small. So then looking at the calendar overall. So it's not an easy logistical thing, that's for sure. And so even to bring it to this level, when with a lot of conversations with, you know, what do we need to accomplish? What do we want to accomplish? And how are some ways of doing that, you know, in a way that is equitable learning?
Is there any talk ever, I know we've talked about it once before at least, about the midterm week? And is there any room there to convert that to professional development? I mean, is there a value in midterm week?
Yeah, so I think this year, and Mr. Paschke, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we've gone to a system as compared to in the past where we have students in the building engaged in testing on those days to a higher degree than we've had in the past. You know, and I think, I'll just leave it at this, I'll give you a chance and either Ms. Troutman or Mr. Paschke to respond. I think there's a belief from our instructors that these midterms are valuable. Not only as a mid-year check-in, get a sense of where students are, be able to think about what have they learned up until this point, how do we adjust and adapt moving forward, and also, you know, kind of a preview of what will happen at the end of the year. Now, there's always a counter argument to that, and, you know, I'm not saying that argument is foolproof, but I think that's the sentiment that I hear from our secondary teachers. Anything to add to that?
And the other piece is that it's only the high school that has those, so if we're going to be doing professional development days, the other buildings don't have those days off. And not that they're off, I don't want to say, you know, but they don't have the time, like if we just said, okay, we're not going to do our midterm week, we're going to, we do losing 4 days of instruction in all of those areas, because everybody else teaches during those days.
And the reason for the full day, or the half days, is that we're still getting instructional credit towards our 180 because they come in for.
You know, just, if I may, the other option, it's tough on a half day instructionally, even if you break it up between the morning classes and the afternoon classes, since they're not going to be necessarily near each other. For teachers who have a morning class of a section and an afternoon class of a section, now those kids are very far apart. They're not in the same place for quite a period of time. So like if you only meet the morning, and let's say it was in October, and then the afternoon class doesn't meet again until November, you know, then it's not impossible to do, but it's not convenient. You know, it may be a good idea to look at some ideas like putting in like the wellness days. You know, the things that we do as initiatives to try to fit in, you know, important things like anti-bullying and drug abuse and all of those things. Great use of a half day, because it's not a whole day where, like, sometimes we'll take a day and say, you know, we're going to focus on this, but it's a long time for kids, you know, and I think a half day might be a great use of that time. That's if we're gonna do those things, and I think they're important, those would be great ways to do it, and we might have 4 different topics that we can hit in a year if we're gonna do it that way. And again, that's just a quick brainstorm idea, but.
And that is something that's come from the professional development committee is talking about pre-COVID, doing those staff student wellness days, and I sat there saying, what is that? That's not something that I had heard about, because I came in a post-COVID world where that wasn't talked about, because it wasn't an option to do. And so people were, sharing some of those ideas, and like Mr. Paschke said, there's different PBS initiatives happening across the district in all of the buildings. So there are creative ways to look and say, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Let's thoughtfully, logistically, strategically see how that can be accomplished. And maybe it's a go, maybe it's not, but it's worth investigating.
Yeah, I guess maybe the only other question I thought is, starting with 4 days, if this is our first time doing it, do we start and try it with 2 or 3, for next, see how well they go, how we pair with some of these topics, looking, I understand probably you have more than 4 half days worth of content that you want to do, and so I get that, but I wonder if this is okay. How do we try this new system?
Absolutely, and everybody's going to have a different, feeling. Certainly, as a teacher for 21 years, I know what it's like to have new curriculum, new mandates come from the state, new this, and not have the time to ever learn about it or talk to my colleagues about it. And now I'm supposed to be doing this with my students. So the idea that to provide with my students the best opportunities they can, I'd like that time to have that chance myself. So that's one of the lenses I'm coming with this, at, is having been a teacher for that long and knowing what it's like to have the state change something or have it come down when you don't even know what, like for example, look at Common Core. The modules in many cases with math or in ELA were handed out in the elementary school 2 weeks before they were supposed to be taught, if that. You'd never seen this content before. It's like, what? So it's, there are a lot of competing demands on teachers that, are often not known if you're not in the classroom. And it's not, and certainly, the new demands are in science. And that's like, so now what about this teacher or that teacher? But we have the art pilot happening and, art and music. So we have a lot of really interesting things happening, in a lot of the disciplines. But certainly, right now there's spotlights on certain aspects.
So if I could, I think the board has just got a couple concerns. One is input from teachers, and then the impact to students. Other than that, I just see so many issues that the board doesn't really have a full grasp of, and how this could be implemented, or all the different issues. But and I don't think that we want to get into a decision of how that gets done.
So another way to do this would be to approve the calendar without any of those days and work on that over time. And if we decided to put a few days or some days in, we could just do that with plenty of notice, either at the beginning of the school year or, as those days got closer. The thought was, do we just have it be part of the calendar? Everyone knows what's happening, and there's no confusion about when the days are, or I wasn't paying attention to maybe a notice that came from the school. So I don't think there's a right and wrong answer here. I think it's just pros and cons. I think it's trade-offs. And really, what we're all comfortable with. So I appreciate the conversation, and I don't want anyone to feel that there's any pressure here to make a decision tonight, or even prior to officially approving the calendar. I think we could always go back and backfill those days if needed, and or not.
I had one other calendar-related question.
Yep.
Which is the 2-week break. I think I think just, for transparency, talking about it, we are an outlier, right, from our surrounding district's perspective. What are we down to? 1 of 2 schools?
I believe so. I think it's just us and Dunkirk.
And I guess, just curious again, was there conversation about appreciating pros and cons, trade-offs, all of those things, but, we're an outlier here, and I think it's important for us to reaffirm that we still want to be an outlier, and that
Here's the perspective I'll offer, and I think I said this last year too, that, again, I was middle school, high school as a secondary teacher administrator throughout. And just becoming superintendent in my prior district, did I really get in touch with the either primary or elementary grades. And one of the things that I didn't factor in so much, although it is in play, that in any break, there's a period of time just before the break and just after the break that aren't as productive. Whether students are already like, hey, we're out of here shortly, or hey, we're back in a mode and we need a few days to kind of get acclimated again. So when I talk with teachers at either Wheelock or the elementary school, and maybe even into 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm not sure what Mrs. Strongman would say about that, is one of the things that they come back to is that from Christmas to, from winter break to spring break, is the time of year when they make the most progress, because generally they have large periods of uninterrupted time. And they feel like students really get in a groove and a mode. And as one teacher said to me, that's when we put the hay in the barn during that time. And if you put a week in the middle of that, or maybe even a little bit closer to winter break, that disrupts that synergy and that energy that, at least according to them, builds over this period of time. That makes sense to me, although I can't fully appreciate that. Dr. Wright, as an elementary principal, I don't know if you have any thoughts you'd want to share about that piece.
Having not been in a district that did the calendar, this way, the difference I've seen from an elementary perspective, definitely with the continuity of instruction, not being interrupted, is tremendous. You think about even the beginning of the year, you just get there and it's Columbus Day. Now, as an elementary teacher, I will tell you, I was crawling to Columbus Day. It was like, okay, it's okay. We have our procedures, our little ones know the, whatever. But then all of a sudden you have conferences, then you have Thanksgiving break, and then you just get things going again. The kids are all jazzed up about, the winter break, and then you have winter break and you're coming back. And all of those breaks, particularly the younger ones, are a reacclimation to school, a reacclimation to routine, and you lose that time trying to get them back on that. And then, so to have that from, like Dr. Zillier said, from winter break until April, without that February break, allows you that continuity of instruction. And what also is nice that I'm seeing in this district is that we don't see a lot of families taking off the week before or a week after to go on vacations at a cheaper price, because every district has that same time off in April. And I can tell you as an elementary teacher, when it was like 3, 4 kids in your class gone because it was cheaper to go to Disney or whereversville, the week before or the week after, when you have that 2-week break, I'm not seeing it. I mean, I'm certainly not in the buildings too, but it doesn't seem that that's that urgency to go on off time. So now you're missing a chunk of your kids as it is, either before or after, so that becomes even more problematic. But the social emotional learning, to have the continuity, is really important with routines. And I was over in Wheelock recently, a few days, the last couple weeks, and talking to the UPK and K teachers. Particularly, they were talking about the morphing of the literacy skills and the reading and writing skills during this time. Is one teacher said to me, "This is the magic." So that's just a very, very straw poll, incidental survey that was happening. But so
Why doesn't everybody else want to put the hay in the barn at the same time?
Well, we wouldn't want anybody leaving a few days before Easter break starts,
Yeah, thanks.
that was a big
That's always been my point of contention, is why doesn't BOCES see
Yes.
a 2-week break as a good thing? And have continuity?
I mean,
That's why-
is that a
There we
flag
go.
we need to carry with BOCES? Like, why?
Well,
If there's so much value in it, then why has it dwindled to 2 districts?
like I said, counterpoint, and I think when I was in districts that had the February break, and I think this was more from a secondary perspective, there was, and you could probably argue that for some students, that's a long haul and a long grind, and having that week is a buffer is potentially helpful. So again, in my mind, it's another thing, there's no right or wrong answer, it's pros and cons, it's trade-offs. It's, kind of where do you want to try to get your benefit? Again, from more of a straw poll, I feel like there's a lot of support for the 2 weeks. But we did not take a poll, we did not do a survey.
Thank you.
Okay. You all set?
Yep, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the board is reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less per individual group. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Not tonight? No? Okay. So our next regular meeting of the Board of Education is April 18th, 2023. 2 days after we get back from Easter break. 6 o'clock right here in the high school library. We will hold a special meeting on the 19th at 8 a.m. In the district office for the purpose of voting on the OC's budget and board election. We will just need 4 members for a quorum for that, and it will be hopefully a 5-minute meeting, and we'll be done. And maybe if one of you wants to say the Pledge of Allegiance, you'll get a candy bar.
And I think, did we decide there's no board election because we have no one up for re-election this year?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Which we could go into a long dissertation of, but there will not be a board, there is not a term ending this year. Other than that, we've got the 2-week break coming right up for Easter. Students, teachers, faculty, staff, be safe, travel safe, have fun. Don't forget everything that we've learned since the beginning of the year. Hear that, seniors? Hopefully they will be inoculated from the dreaded senioritis disease after Easter break. But, okay.
Great presentation.
Mr. Johnston.
I anticipate. No, great presentations tonight. Really enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Gillo, any comment?
No.
No? That's it? Okay. Ms. Porter? Okay. Mr. Hawk?
Just ditto to what Mr. Johnson said, great presentations. I enjoyed seeing the kids here, and
Yeah. Yeah, good. Mr. Marshall?
Great presentation. Great presentations.
Enjoyed
Ms.
the
Hunt?
presentations, and I am appreciative of Mr. Schrantz for his words and sharing this information with us. The thing that jumped out at me was that for these other districts, it takes 2.5 to 3 years of good planning to lead to a successful athletic complex building project. So, just want to point that out. Thank you.
We'll come back. Dr. Wright?
I'm appreciative of the presentation. It's great to see some of those behind-the-scenes things happening. With STEM, with the idea of the success skills. I think that Mr. Hitchcock did a great job explaining really where the value of project-based learning is and how working with your hands can help you have that same depth of learning, and especially something to recall when you think and you get into U.S. history and the other courses, Global 10, and you're talking about the world wars, and you've made those trenches, and you're seeing them, and now you're trying to visualize this map, and all of that, and you can harken back to those skills. So I think you just did a really lovely job of explaining that, and so I'm just appreciative for all of the conversations tonight.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Paskey?
I've got a lot right now, sorry. Seniors, a note to you guys, waiting for the last meeting of the quarter is a bad idea. You're wrong. I just wanted to say thanks to Brandy Nudie, who really took the initiative for Women's History Month, and right outside the high school office, we had a poster of a different woman each day from history, and a nice biography, and so she was responsible for that, so I wanted to thank her. Fantastic job with the musical, we just finished up with that, so congratulations to all of the people involved with the musical. Also, last week we did an ENL Culture Night in the middle school that had all grade levels invited. That was fantastic for a Hispanic night. This week we kind of designated as Fredonia Week leading into our break. So in the high school we have the teachers all dressing up in orange and black, and we're going to be ending the week off with a potluck lunch just to enjoy our time together, to give them a little bit of relaxation when it's a little tense. So as we get close to the end of the third quarter, heading into the fourth quarter, it's a good way to end. I also wanted to thank our teachers that are volunteering to be on our Freshman Academy Committee. We were making some good strides on some changes for next year, including starting out having like a 6-hour freshman experience right before school starts, right before our 3 in-service days. One of the things we're looking at, changing our schedule a little bit for next year, and including an elongated homeroom we're going to call an advisement period, where the kids will, instead of starting off the day with kind of like a 2 or 3 minutes added to first period, where we do our announcements, they're going to have like a 10, 11, 12-minute period more towards the middle of the day before lunch, where they're going to be with the same group of kids every single day, an opportunity for some growth and building for our kids. Just some good stuff coming out of this. We have our Holocaust speaker tomorrow, which we mentioned at the last board meeting, so if you guys can make it, that's at 1 o'clock, as a reminder. Over the break, thanks to Tom Donovan, who puts together this super mega game session. So our game club comes in over the break, which I kind of sponsor that. It's something that I thought was important to do for our kids over the break that might not have something. Kids that are excited to come and play games, that's great, but more importantly for kids who might have a difficult home life, just don't really want to spend time at home or don't have anything to do, they come in, we just have a bunch of pizza, we play games for several hours and drink lots of Dr. Pepper. The Galapagos trip is going to be going on over the break, so good luck to them. We're looking forward to that exciting trip. And just last, I just wanted to take a second to thank John for his work on the budget. I know that there was nothing in there about staffing. I appreciate the board bringing that up and looking at anything that we can do to improve some of the staffing that we are looking for. So if there is any leeway in there, so I just thank you for looking at anything that comes your way.
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what were the needs most of all that you were looking for?
In the high school, it's kind of compounded by a couple of things. One is the middle school doesn't have a school psychologist, so the other psychologists have had to step up. There have been no applicants for that position, which takes our psychologists out of our student support services office quite frequently. We also would love to have a more social worker. We have a social worker 2 days a week currently, so we're looking to increase our social worker to 5 days a week. Again, there was no poll taken, but just by observation, I would say that we've doubled the number of kids visiting our student support services office since COVID. It's difficult for our counselors to get their regular counseling work done because they're meeting the needs of our kids, which have to come first. So anything we could do to supplement that would be extremely helpful. I mean, if I want bang for our buck, I think our kids need some help with their mental health. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Ms. Troutman?
So it was fun to see the drone presentation. This last week I was in Ivy Krenzer's room. She's our tech teacher in the middle school, and she is actually using our Waza Ed kits. And so I went into a 5th grade class, and our 5th graders are flying drones, and they're doing a great job. She did a lesson in which she put a question on the board, and each answer was color-coded. They had to answer the question, figure out which answer they wanted, and fly their drone to the table that had that color. And it was pretty amazing to see. The kids were so engaged and excited about it. And so they were moving on to do obstacles today and moving forward. So it's really going to grow Greg's program because our kids get to her class and they don't want to leave. and they're very excited to be there. So we're doing a lot of cool things with STEM in the middle school. Quest is up and running and we're getting trainings going. We have about 46 kids that are involved in the Quest, so you'll hear more about that as we move forward. And this Friday, we are doing a Pride Day in the middle school, so it'll be a fun activities all day long, and we are doing a pep rally, which we have not done since before COVID. And so a lot of these kids don't even know what a pep rally is. So we had a pretty large group of teachers who got together after hours, and we're trying to make it a really fun day for the kids, so I'm really excited. I will be having whipped cream on my face and people throwing marshmallows at it, and there's lots of little different activities going on, so it should be a fun day for everyone.
Good. And the Quest, do you know the dates right offhand?
I don't.
Okay, okay. Mr. Drollinger.
Yeah, we're looking forward to break at the elementary level, and it's not too often that I get to highlight an individual student for his or her athletic accomplishments, but we recently had a student in the 4th grade. His name is AJ Williams, and he traveled to Syracuse this past weekend for the New York State Wrestling Association for Youth, and he earned his 4th state championship for his weight class. So it's really kind of cool. We have a lot of little athletes, but it's special when one gets to that level. So his father wanted me to share that with the board, and on the morning announcements and things like that. So we're really proud of that at our building. And we are wrapping up our readathon. We have a celebration on Thursday where there's going to be a series of events that reward kids for the amount that they've read. I heard they're going to do some duct taping and silly stringing to one in particular individual, but I don't know who yet. But I don't know, I'm busy that day. And then there's also going to be bounce house in the building on Friday. We're going to reward our kids for their good behavior and things like that as well, and blow off some steam as it's at a high level of energy this time of year. And today we did say farewell to Peg. Today was her last day in our building. She's returning back to the WELAC building where she began her career, working with the littlest ones. So we did. We lined up all the kids in the hallway. We clapped her out of the building and gave her cards and things like that. So she was really touched by that. We had breakfast for the staff today as well. And as far as needs, if you were asking,
Sure.
One thing that was requested kind of for the district-wide, as I didn't have any individual needs, requested was a behavior specialist. It's kind of a new take on an individual, but our behavior referral rate at the elementary level is up over 150%. It's something that we struggle with, and when kids act out at my level, it's because they're crying for help. You know what I mean? It's our job to figure out what they need and give it to them. And a behavior specialist district-wide would be helpful in that, because they design plans, and those plans help the teacher, but ultimately it's the student that wins if they don't have to act out anymore. So that's what we have going on. But thank you, and enjoy your break. Thank you.
So on the day that you said you were busy, did you really mean to say that you were going to be tied up?
They said I fit the criteria for the duct tape to stick me to the wall and lighten it up, and I said, I don't know about that, but I guess I'm available, right?
Guess you'll be tied up
Yeah,
that day.
I'll be tied up that
You'll be tied up that
I will.
day. Yeah, okay. Ms. Farrow.
Hi, so last week was Inclusion Week, so it was spread the word activities that were, they were shared that included lesson plans and videos and pledges that students took to help our community recognize our similarities over our differences. So that was a nice week. For students, we're excited to begin Unified Basketball, and really we're just continuing our work at assessing needs, developing plans for the upcoming school year, as we talked about.
So you're starting modified basketball, or, yeah. Unified.
Did I say modified?
No, I said modified. I'm sorry. That was my bad. So when will that start?
Honestly, I think they've started practices, or
Okay.
they're beginning to talk about it. I'm not sure
Okay.
what the schedule is, I think to say it.
They have started practice.
Okay. Thank you for knowing.
That's great.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's always a really cool season.
Mr. Forbes, do you have anything, or are you all talked out for tonight? You are?
The seniors asked for a recap of the budget.
I'll give out signed copies too.
Okay. The board anticipates the need to enter into executive session to discuss matters pertaining to contract negotiations. So if I could get a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Ms. Powell, and a second.
Second.
Ms. Golden. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are in executive session at 8:16. Thank you, everyone.